The village of Whispering Winds lay cradled between misty hills and dark, whispering forests, where the wind carried secrets as easily as it carried the scent of damp earth. In this village, every small movement, every unusual sound, was steeped in superstition. Elders spoke of spirits that watched the deeds of mortals, rewarding virtue and punishing malice. Children grew up with tales of invisible eyes in the forest and whispers in the reeds that foretold both fortune and misfortune. Among the low, thatched-roof houses and winding dirt paths lived a young girl named Amara. She was gentle and diligent, rising at first light to sweep the yard, fetch water from the nearby stream, and tend to the small patch of vegetables her family could call their own. Her hands were nimble and kind. She cared for the chickens, bandaged scraped knees of children, and shared her small portion of food with any stray animal that wandered near. Even the elders noticed her diligence. "She carries light in her hands," they would murmur, blessing her as she passed. But in the same household lived her stepsister, Leora, a girl of similar age whose heart had already begun to darken with envy. While Amara's face glowed with warmth and her every action drew admiration, Leora moved like a shadow, plodding quietly, her eyes narrowing at the praises given to Amara. She whispered to herself in the dark corners, "Why does she shine when I toil? Why do the spirits favor her and not me?" Life in the village was far from easy. The streams had been thin for months, the crops struggled to grow, and every household felt the squeeze of scarcity. Villagers often whispered that the misfortunes were the result of unseen spirits, punishing those who failed to honor their ancestors. In such a world, every small act of perceived favor was magnified. Amara, by virtue of her kindness and diligence, appeared to have the spirit's blessing, and this fueled Leora's jealousy even further. Every day, Amara moved with quiet grace through the tasks of the household. She swept the floor with gentle strokes, carefully avoiding the edges of the mat her stepsister had meticulously arranged. She carried water in clay pots, careful not to spill a drop, singing softly as she worked. Villagers passing by would nod in greeting, their faces lighting up at the sight of her. Her laughter was light, infectious, and full of life, yet Leora saw only the attention it drew away from her own meager accomplishments. The stepsister's envy manifested in small, insidious ways. She would hide Amara's tools when she wasn't looking, spill water from her pot to force extra labor, and even speak ill of her to neighbors, casting shadows over her reputation. But the village, attuned to subtle truths and guided by the elders' wisdom, saw through these petty schemes. Amara remained beloved, a quiet beacon of goodness amid the village's struggles. At night, when the wind rattled the wooden shutters and the forest whispered in ominous tones, Amara lay awake in her simple mat, thinking of the day past and the day to come. She was unaware of the plots forming around her, of the malice that simmered in her stepsister's heart. Yet, somewhere in the hidden corners of the village, forces older than memory seemed to stir, watching over her as she slept. Her life, though simple, was a delicate balance of labor, kindness, and the unseen touch of spirits. Every action she took, feeding the chickens, helping a neighbor, fetching clean water, was observed not only by the villagers but, in ways she did not yet know, by forces that could turn envy into consequence, and malice into revelation. In the hush of the village at night, the soft sigh of wind through the reeds and the distant hoot of an owl seemed almost like a lullaby. It was a world alive with caution, superstition, and the quiet power of goodness. And in the heart of it all, Amara slept, innocent, diligent, and unaware of the trials that awaited her with the dawn. The days in Whispering Winds flowed slowly, each one carrying with it the weight of survival and the quiet hum of village life. Amara moved through them with tireless care, tending to the chores that were expected of her and often more. She rose before dawn, sweeping the yard with gentle, precise strokes, fetching water from the stream, and repairing the simple fences that kept chickens and goats safe. Her hands bore the marks of diligence, small calluses and faint scars that spoke of long hours and hard work. Leora, by contrast, spent her days watching. Her jealousy festered like a slow poison, every compliment Amara received sharpening the edges of her resentment. When the village elders praised Amara for her kindness, Leora seethed in silence. "Why does she get their blessing while I am ignored?" she muttered, pacing the narrow confines of the shared household. The bitterness in her voice was almost tangible, curling around every shadowed corner of the house. Small acts of malice began to emerge, subtle yet persistent. Leora would hide Amara's tools. A broken broom handle, a missing knife for cutting vegetables, or misplaced water jugs, forcing her stepsister into extra labor each morning. Sometimes she would spill water or scatter flour, ensuring that chores took longer and frustration mounted. Yet each time, Amara approached the situation with calm, tending to the mess with gentle hands and patient heart. She never accused Leora, never retaliated, only quietly restored order as if the minor setbacks were invisible. But Leora's envy did not stop there. She whispered lies to neighbors, planting seeds of doubt about Amara's intentions. She takes more than her share of the harvest, Leora would claim, or Amara seeks attention with her soft words and tidy ways. The villagers, wise and perceptive, mostly saw through the deceit, but the whispers lingered like faint shadows, enough to keep tension simmering beneath the surface. The household itself became a place of quiet strife. Meals were shared with a sense of suspicion. Every glance between sisters carried unspoken challenges. Leora's eyes would narrow at Amara's accomplishments, and her hands, which could have helped, often lingered idle. Meanwhile, Amara continued her work without complaint, her actions silently demonstrating patience, resilience, and virtue. At night, the village seemed to lean closer as if it were listening. Stories of spirits and ancient guardians whispered through the trees and along the streams, tales of beings that watched deeds both good and evil. Amara, unaware of the deepening malice, felt a comforting presence as she completed her chores. The soft sigh of the wind through reeds and the distant calls of owls seemed almost protective, wrapping around her like a cloak. Leora, however, felt the opposite. The weight of envy and anger made the nights restless. She plotted more boldly, moving in secret to disrupt Amara's routines. Sometimes she would tamper with the food, hide the necessary tools for her stepsister's chores, or even try to provoke animals into mischief. Each action was calculated, designed to sow frustration or fear, yet always careful to avoid detection by the elders. Despite all this, Amara's nature remained steadfast. She greeted each day with a smile, offered help without expectation, and spoke words of encouragement to neighbors and children alike. Her kindness was a quiet force, radiating through the village, drawing the attention of both the living and the unseen spirits that seemed to linger at the edge of the forest. The tension between the sisters grew like a knot tightening in the fabric of the household. Leora's envy deepened, feeding off every instance of praise, every act of goodwill that Amara displayed. Yet the village, attuned to virtue, continued to support and admire the girl who carried light in her actions. The stage was set. Beneath the calm surface of village life, malice brewed, and the day would come when envy and innocence would clash in a way that could not be contained by whispers alone. Night had fallen over whispering winds, shrouding the village in a soft cloak of mist and shadow. The air carried a chill, and the distant cry of an owl echoed through the reeds, as if announcing the approach of something secret and sinister. Inside the shared household, Amara lay asleep on her simple mat, the rhythm of her breathing slow and steady. The day's chores had worn her, but her heart remained light, unaware of the danger creeping closer in the darkness. Leora moved quietly, her feet careful not to betray her presence. Every shadow seemed to stretch toward her, as though conspiring with her malicious intentions. Her hands clutched a small bundle of nails, sharpened and hidden beneath her cloak, a cruel gift meant to torment her innocent stepsister. She paused for a moment, listening to the soft sighs of the night, the wind in the reeds, the distant babble of the stream, the faint stirring of nocturnal creatures. All seemed still, all seemed perfect for her plan. She approached the mat where Amara slept, heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. With trembling fingers, she tucked the nails carefully beneath the woven mat, ensuring they lay hidden and angled in unpredictable ways. Each nail was a silent threat, a symbol of envy's power when allowed to fester. Leora smirked, imagining the surprise, the sharp pain, and the potential panic that would greet her stepsister at dawn. Outside, the village was alive with quiet sounds, the whispering wind, the occasional rustle of reeds, the subtle hum of spirits that the villagers believed watched over them. Leora ignored these signs, focused solely on her cruelty. Yet even as she finished her task, she felt a faint shiver along her spine, as if unseen eyes were observing, measuring, waiting. Amara shifted in her sleep, murmuring softly, but remained unaware of the trap beneath her. The mat, so familiar and comforting, now held hidden danger. Leora stepped back, glancing over her shoulder, her chest tight with both excitement and fear. The act, she thought, would finally demonstrate her cunning and superiority. The girl who had always outshone her would feel the sting of envy in a tangible, unforgettable way. The night deepened, thick mist curling around the houses and covering the walkways with silver dew. Leora slipped away, leaving the mat and its hidden nails behind. She imagined the dawn, the inevitable yelp of pain, and the villagers' gasps. But unknown to her, the unseen forces of the village, the spirits whispered about in tales, were stirring. Somewhere in the shadows, a presence watched, attuning itself to the intentions behind Leora's cruelty. Hours passed slowly. The moon traced pale paths across the floor, casting silver light on the sleeping figure of Amara. Each nail lay in place beneath her, waiting, but the mat itself seemed to hum faintly, almost protective. The spirits of the village, long silent observers, recognized innocence and malice alike, and their attention now lingered on the sleeping girl. Amara dreamed of morning, of the streams, the chickens, the soft murmur of neighbors, and her heart remained untroubled. She did not yet know of the night's danger. The air seemed charged, thick with anticipation, and the village itself seemed to hold its breath. Leora, retreating to her own bed, closed her eyes with a triumphant smile, unaware that her actions had already been witnessed by forces she could neither see nor comprehend. The night hummed with expectancy, ready to reveal that cruelty, no matter how cleverly concealed, could not go unchallenged. And as the first light of dawn touched the village, the hidden nails began to respond in a way neither sister could have imagined, standing upright in the yard, a silent testament to the night's unseen judgment. Dawn broke over whispering winds, spilling soft golden light across the village. Birds began their morning songs, and the wind rustled gently through the reeds, carrying the scent of wet earth and dew. Inside the small household, Amara stirred, stretching beneath the warmth of her thin blanket. She yawned, unaware of the danger that had lain beneath her during the night. As she rose from her mat, a strange sensation prickled her skin. Something felt unusual. Her eyes flicked to the floor, and she noticed the faint, almost imperceptible outlines of the nails she had slept above. Her heart skipped, a cold twinge of unease gripping her chest. She bent to inspect the mat and found nothing amiss beneath it, yet the feeling lingered. Stepping outside, Amara's eyes widened. There, in the soft glow of the early morning, the nails were standing upright in the yard, perfectly aligned, pointing skyward as if they had been planted by some unseen hand. They caught the sunlight, gleaming ominously, forming strange patterns in the dirt. The sight was both terrifying and miraculous, and Amara instinctively stepped back, hands clasped to her chest. Villagers began to emerge, drawn by the unusual spectacle. Mothers carrying infants paused in the doorway, elders leaned on walking sticks, and children crept closer, curious and cautious. Whispers spread quickly, a mix of awe, fear, and speculation. "The spirits have marked the night," one elder murmured. "Something has intervened." Amara remained still, her mind racing. She knew her stepsister's envy had driven cruel schemes before, but nothing like this had ever happened. And yet, the nails did not seem aimed to harm her directly. They stood as silent sentinels, a warning or perhaps a judgment. She felt a faint warmth in the air, as though invisible eyes were watching, confirming that innocence had been preserved and malice exposed. Leora appeared at the doorway, feigning innocence. "Amara, what is this?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly despite her attempt at casualness. But the villagers' gazes fell upon her, sharp and questioning, and whispers of suspicion spread faster than the morning light. Some recognized the pattern of her malice, though none yet dared speak openly. Amara's heart pounded, but she held herself steady. She had survived hardships before, minor cruelties, harsh words, and the burdens of village life, and she understood that panic would serve no purpose. She took a deep breath and examined the nails, noting the impossible precision with which they stood upright. The air around them seemed to hum softly, a subtle vibration that made the hairs on her arms rise. The villagers drew closer, murmuring among themselves. "It is the spirits," an elder finally said aloud. "They protect the just and reveal the wicked." Others nodded, eyes fixed on the mysterious spectacle. Even those who had doubted or feared the unseen were forced to acknowledge that some higher judgment had occurred. Leora, sensing the shift in attention, paled. The carefully constructed facade of innocence she had maintained through weeks of envy and plotting was crumbling. Her eyes darted nervously from Amara to the upright nails and back to the gathering villagers. Every whisper of wind, every tilt of the reeds seemed to accentuate her guilt. Amara stepped forward, her presence calm yet commanding. "This is not my doing," she said, voice clear, carrying over the hushed crowd. "But it shows that harm born of envy cannot stand. Let us remember that the spirits watch, and that kindness and truth are stronger than malice." The villagers nodded, murmuring in agreement. Fear mixed with reverence as they absorbed the morning's revelation. The nails were more than a warning, they were proof of justice beyond mortal hands. And as the first rays of sunlight glinted on the upright points, a subtle warmth filled the yard, affirming that Amara's innocence had been preserved, while Leora's cruelty had been exposed without need for confrontation. By mid-morning, the story had begun to spread throughout the village. People who had not seen the spectacle firsthand still whispered of the miraculous display, reinforcing the belief that the spirits protected those who were pure of heart and punished those whose envy ran unchecked. Amara remained composed, allowing the events to speak for themselves, knowing that the truth had revealed itself in a way both powerful and undeniable. As the morning unfolded over whispering winds, the yard where the nails had risen became the center of the village's attention. Word spread quickly, carried by hushed whispers and urgent footsteps. Neighbors came from adjoining houses, drawn by the mysterious sight that seemed both impossible and portentous. Each step toward the yard was measured, reverent, as if the villagers were entering sacred ground. Amara stood quietly, her hands folded in front of her, observing the upright nails. They glimmered in the sunlight, casting long, sharp shadows across the soil. Patterns emerged, deliberate arrangements that seemed almost intentional, as though each nail had been placed with purpose beyond mortal understanding. Some villagers muttered that the arrangement resembled the shape of a protective symbol, others that it mimicked a story told in the oldest folktales, the tale of the spirits who punished malice and protected virtue. The elders arrived soon after, leaning heavily on their walking sticks, eyes squinting against the sunlight. Their faces were a mixture of astonishment and solemnity. One elder, her white hair catching the morning light, stepped forward. "These nails, they are not of human doing," she said in a quiet, awe-filled voice. "The spirits themselves have moved them. They stand as testimony to the night's events, and they will not fall until the lesson is learned." Amara felt a shiver run down her spine, not of fear but of awe. She had always sensed the presence of unseen guardians in the village, the gentle hum of protective spirits through the reeds and streams. Yet now their intervention was undeniable. The nails were more than a miracle, they were a manifestation of the balance between right and wrong, of justice beyond human hands. Villagers began to speak among themselves, their voices tinged with a mix of fear, curiosity, and respect. Mothers lifted their children, ensuring they saw the spectacle, so that the youngest would remember that kindness must be protected and envy punished. Men who had once doubted the unseen forces bowed slightly, acknowledging the undeniable display of mystical power. Leora hovered near the edge of the crowd, her face pale, lips pressed into a thin line. She had expected surprise and discomfort, yes, but not judgment so visible, not the undeniable intervention of forces she could neither command nor manipulate. She shrank back, the whispers of villagers like needles in her ears, piercing her carefully maintained facade of innocence. Amara, sensing the fear and awe around her, remained calm. She did not need to speak loudly, the upright nails spoke with their own authority. Yet she raised her voice gently, addressing the villagers. "See what envy and cruelty bring," she said. "See how virtue is protected. The spirits remind us that no harm done in malice shall prosper, and that innocence guided by care and patience is never unprotected." The villagers nodded solemnly. Some began to place small offerings near the nails, flowers, woven reeds and bowls of water, as a gesture of reverence, acknowledging the unseen forces that had intervened. The display became both a lesson and a ritual, an unspoken agreement that the village would honor the invisible guardians and uphold the virtues that had been exemplified in Amara. Even the land itself seemed to respond. The morning breeze carried a subtle warmth, rustling the reeds and bending them gently toward the upright nails, as though bowing in recognition. The soil beneath the points remained firm and undisturbed, a sign that the miracle was enduring, its message etched into the very earth. Amara realized that she had been spared not only by her own virtue but by the vigilant eyes of the marsh and forest spirits. The stepsister's attempt to cause pain had been rendered powerless, reversed by forces older and wiser than human malice. And though the villagers were learning of the event, she understood that the true power lay not in their recognition but in the enduring protection and affirmation of right over wrong. By mid-morning, the yard had become a place of quiet pilgrimage. Villagers moved respectfully, children pointing and asking questions, elders explaining the significance. Every upright nail was a testament, a warning, and a lesson. Envy harms only the envious, virtue is shielded, and the spirits watch ceaselessly. Amara's heart was calm yet full. She understood now that the trials she endured were not random, nor were they solely the work of human cruelty. There were forces in the world, spirits of land, water, and sky, that could protect the pure-hearted and ensure that justice prevailed, often in ways beyond mortal comprehension. As the sun climbed higher, the story of the upright nails spread beyond the village, carried by messengers and travelers. Whispering Winds would remember this morning as the day when the invisible became visible, when cruelty was exposed, and when innocence and virtue were shown to be under the watchful eyes of the unseen guardians of the village. The village of Whispering Winds was abuzz with tension as the morning wore on. The upright nails in Amara's yard had become a focal point for every eye in the community. Mothers held their children close, elders whispered among themselves, and even the more skeptical villagers moved cautiously toward the mysterious display, each step measured as if they were approaching a sacred altar. Leora lingered at the edge of the crowd, her face pale and her hands clenched tightly. She had tried to maintain a composed facade, but the nails stood as a silent indictment of her malice. Every gaze that fell upon her felt like fire, every whisper like a needle prick. The villagers were beginning to piece together the truth, guided both by intuition and the undeniable intervention of the spirits. Amara remained calm, standing near the upright nails, the morning sun catching her hair and giving her an almost ethereal glow. She understood the weight of the moment. The villagers looked to her for understanding, seeking guidance not only in interpreting the supernatural signs but in navigating the social implications of the incident. She raised her voice, soft but commanding, "These nails have risen not by human hand, but by the guardians who watch over our village. They stand to protect the innocent and reveal the truth hidden in darkness." The villagers leaned closer, murmuring among themselves. Eyes shifted toward Leora, who shrank back but could not escape the mounting scrutiny. Some whispered accusations, others sought confirmation, but the general consensus was clear. The stepsister's hand had been involved in the attempted mischief. An elder, her voice steady and commanding, stepped forward. "We have lived long enough to know when cruelty is masked as care. These nails do not lie. The spirit's intervention is a mirror reflecting the hearts of those involved." She gestured toward Leora. "The envy, the plotting, the secret malice, all have been revealed. Let the child speak and let the truth guide our judgment." Leora's eyes darted nervously, her lips quivering. She opened her mouth, then closed it, caught between fear and pride. The villagers' gazes bore into her, unyielding and sharp, and finally her voice broke through, trembling. I hid them. I meant to frighten her, to teach her, to show her that she faltered, unable to complete the lie she had hoped would mask her guilt. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some villagers nodded knowingly, others shook their heads in disbelief. The stepsister's confession, coupled with the undeniable display of supernatural intervention, left no room for denial. Even those who had been neutral observers could not escape the truth laid bare before them. Amara approached gently, her expression calm, almost forgiving. She did not scold or lash out, she let the spirit's judgment speak for itself. "The truth has come to light," she said. "Let it be a lesson. Envy harms the envious, cruelty is revealed, and virtue, when guided by patience and care, is protected." Her voice carried a quiet authority, and the villagers felt it in their bones. Some villagers, still in awe of the upright nails, began to bring small offerings, flowers, woven reeds, even bowls of water, placing them at the edge of the yard. These gestures were both reverent and symbolic, acknowledging the spirit's role in revealing the truth and protecting the innocent. Leora sank to her knees, shame overwhelming her. She had sought to harm, yet she was powerless against forces she could not see or control. The villagers, guided by Amara's calm example, offered advice tempered with wisdom, to seek forgiveness, to reflect, and to amend one's ways. As the morning progressed, the tension softened into a mixture of reverence and understanding. Leora's confession had not only cleared Amara of any wrongdoing but also allowed the village to witness a profound lesson in morality. The upright nails stood firm, silent witnesses to the consequences of malice and the protective power of virtue. Amara's calm, dignified response elevated her in the villagers' eyes. She had been tested not only by human envy but by the supernatural forces that watched over Whispering Winds. By meeting the challenge with patience and integrity, she had turned a moment of potential danger into a demonstration of courage, wisdom, and moral authority. By midday the crowd had dispersed, carrying the story to the far edges of the village. Mothers recounted it to children, elders explained it to neighbors, and the upright nails remained, shining in the sun, as both a warning and a symbol of protection. Amara had become more than a girl who endured cruelty, she had become a living testament to the strength of virtue and the quiet power of the righteous. The sun had climbed higher over Whispering Winds, but the yard where the nails stood upright remained charged with a quiet, uncanny energy. The villagers, having dispersed and returned to their daily tasks, could not shake the lingering sense of awe and reverence. Even the wind through the reeds seemed to hum with life, carrying faint whispers that only the attuned could perceive. Amara remained near the nails, her hands clasped in front of her, feeling the subtle warmth radiating from the soil and the objects themselves. The nails were no longer just metal, they were conduits of judgment, instruments through which the spirits of the village expressed their disapproval of malice and their protection of virtue. The sunlight glinted off their sharp points, creating patterns of firelight that danced across the dirt, as though the spirits themselves were shaping the display. The stepsister, Leora, cowered near the edge of the yard, her shoulders hunched, eyes wide with fear and disbelief. She had confessed her cruelty, but she had not anticipated the spirit's active involvement. The nails remained upright, unwavering, as though animated by an unseen hand. Every movement Leora made seemed to echo unnaturally, the air around her trembling slightly in response, and the village itself seemed to hold its breath. Amara's voice broke the silence, calm yet resolute. "See how the spirits have responded. The malice hidden in hearts cannot escape their notice. The upright nails are not mere metal, they are judgment made manifest, a message that cruelty shall not prosper." The villagers, sensing the growing presence of the unseen forces, approached slowly. Mothers and fathers, elders and children, all stopped at a respectful distance, their eyes fixed on the miraculous scene. Some whispered prayers, others fell to their knees, acknowledging the protective power that had intervened. Even those who had doubted the village legends felt a chill of reverence. As the day progressed, subtle changes became apparent. The nails, once simply upright, began to shift slightly, forming intricate patterns that mirrored ancient symbols known to the elders. Spirals and lines intertwined, creating a labyrinthine design, as if the spirits themselves were illustrating the path of morality, showing the consequences of malice and the safety found in virtue. Leora could not tear her eyes away. She saw the truth reflected not only in the nails but in the way the air seemed to vibrate around them. Each whisper of the wind, each rustle of the reeds, carried an almost tangible weight, pressing down on her conscience. Her hands shook, her breaths came shallow, and her knees threatened to buckle beneath her. The spirits were not content with passive observation, they were active arbiters of justice. Amara stepped closer to Leora, though never threatening, never condemning by her own hand. She simply allowed the spirit's judgment to manifest fully. The air around the stepsister grew warmer, the vibrations stronger, as if the energy of the marsh and forest itself pressed upon her, demanding acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Leora fell to her knees, head bowed, overwhelmed by the invisible yet undeniable presence of forces she could neither escape nor comprehend. The villagers watched silently as the spirit's judgment unfolded. They saw the upright nails begin to pulse faintly, tiny sparks of light running along their edges, illuminating the patterns etched into the earth. The display was mesmerizing, terrifying, and beautiful, a clear manifestation of supernatural justice. Every whispered warning from the elders' stories, every cautionary tale of the spirit's vigilance, now seemed vividly real. Amara's calm presence contrasted with Leora's fear, demonstrating that justice did not require anger or malice. The spirits acted, but they acted in accordance with moral balance. Innocence was shielded, cruelty exposed. The lesson was clear: the forces that govern morality need not strike with fire or destruction. Even the simplest tools, such as these nails, could serve as instruments of revelation and consequence. By late afternoon, Leora was humbled, trembling, her pride dissolved, while the villagers absorbed the profound lesson. They understood that the upright nails were more than a miracle. They were a reminder that virtue attracts protection, and that envy, malice, and deceit inevitably bring exposure and shame. Amara remained serene, embodying the truth that one could face malevolence with patience, courage, and integrity, leaving judgment to forces greater than oneself. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, the nails remained upright, unyielding, and radiant in the fading light. The village understood that they were permanent witnesses, a reminder of the day when cruelty was revealed, innocence protected, and the spirit's judgment made tangible. Amara's quiet dignity had allowed the natural order to manifest, and the entire community felt the weight and blessing of that divine oversight. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long golden rays over whispering winds, yet the upright nails in Amara's yard remained steadfast, catching the light and pulsing with quiet authority. The villagers, still drawn by the miraculous display, moved with reverence, some kneeling, others standing with hands clasped, all aware that they were witnessing a rare intervention of the spirits. Amara stood at the center, calm and composed, her presence commanding without force. Her eyes swept over the villagers, noting the mixture of awe, curiosity, and newfound respect in their expressions. Even the stepsister Leora remained nearby, trembling but attentive, humbled by the events and the clear judgment of forces beyond her understanding. The elders approached Amara, their steps slow and deliberate. One spoke, voice carrying the weight of authority and experience. "Child, you have endured cruelty without retaliation. The spirits have acknowledged your innocence and virtue. It is our duty now to honor you, for you have proven yourself worthy of guidance and protection beyond what we can offer alone." Villagers began to gather small offerings, woven reeds, bowls of water, and wildflowers, placing them at the base of the nails. The act was symbolic, a gesture acknowledging both the spirit's role and Amara's unwavering courage. Children peeked from behind their mother's skirts, eyes wide, absorbing the lesson that innocence and steadfastness could command respect and protection, even from unseen forces. Amara felt a quiet warmth spread through her chest. The day's events had not been born of human strength alone but of the alignment of courage, patience, and moral integrity with the watchful eyes of the spirits. She knelt briefly to adjust a bowl of water, whispering a soft prayer of thanks for protection and guidance. Leora, still seated on the edge of the yard, watched the display with a mixture of shame and contemplation. The lesson of the morning was clear. Envy and malice led only to exposure and fear, while virtue was rewarded not through immediate human intervention but through a broader, spiritual acknowledgement. Slowly she rose, hands trembling, and approached Amara cautiously. I am sorry," she whispered. "I see now that my cruelty could harm not just you but the village and perhaps myself as well." Amara looked at her stepsister, recognizing the genuine remorse in her eyes. She did not respond with anger or scorn. Instead, she offered a gentle nod, conveying that understanding and change were more powerful than punishment. The villagers observed silently, realizing that the balance of justice did not always require wrath. Sometimes it was mercy, coupled with the undeniable force of truth, that restored harmony. By mid-afternoon, the yard had become a place of communal respect. Villagers approached in small groups, offering words of praise and support to Amara. They listened intently as she spoke about patience, the importance of maintaining virtue even when faced with cruelty, and the unseen guardians who watched over those who acted with honesty and care. Her words were measured, yet every syllable carried weight, reinforced by the miraculous morning that no one could deny. The upright nails remained, casting elongated shadows across the earth, but their purpose had shifted. No longer mere instruments of judgment, they had become symbols of restored order, moral clarity, and the protective presence of the spirits. Even the most skeptical villagers found themselves drawn to them, feeling both awe and reassurance that the invisible forces were attentive and just. As evening approached, the village gathered for a quiet ceremony. Torches were lit, small flames flickering in rhythm with the reeds and the setting sun. Amara guided the villagers in placing offerings at the base of the nails, explaining their significance and ensuring that the lesson would endure. Children laughed softly, mimicking the careful placement of flowers and bowls, learning through participation that courage and virtue required patience, integrity, and respect for the unseen world. By the time night fell, Whispering Winds had been transformed. The events of the day had not only exposed cruelty and protected innocence but had also restored a sense of harmony and reverence within the community. Amara, once a quiet girl enduring daily hardships, was now a figure of respect, a living testament to the power of patience, virtue, and the watchful guidance of the spirits who had revealed themselves in the upright nails. As the days passed in Whispering Winds, the story of the upright nails became more than a tale whispered among neighbors. It became part of the village's living memory. Elders told the story to children as they gathered near hearths, their faces lined with age and wisdom, voices carrying the weight of generations. The lesson was clear. Virtue is shielded by unseen forces, envy and cruelty are revealed, and the smallest acts of malice can never go unnoticed. Carved wooden tablets began to appear in homes and communal spaces, each etched with simple illustrations of nails standing upright in the yard, a symbolic record of the morning when spirits had intervened. The elders instructed that every child learn the story, teaching the importance of honesty, patience, and the careful stewardship of one's actions. "Remember," they said, pointing to the tablets, "the spirits watch and they protect those who walk the path of virtue. Envy and cruelty will always be revealed." Amara became the living embodiment of these lessons. She continued her daily work with the same diligence as before, yet now her presence carried weight beyond her own household. Villagers approached her for advice, seeking guidance in disputes, moral dilemmas, and the management of chores and responsibilities. Children followed her, asking questions about right and wrong, and she answered with patience, illustrating lessons through stories, small demonstrations, and the simple example of her unwavering conduct. The upright nails remained in the yard for weeks, maintained carefully by the villagers as both a reminder and a shrine. They became a focal point for daily reflection and occasional offerings. A child would place a handful of wildflowers, an elder might pour water at the base, and travelers passing through were taught to respect the place. The village recognized that the event was not just a spectacle but a living lesson, a bridge between the seen and unseen, human effort and divine intervention. Even Leora took part in preserving the memory, though her journey was humbler. She worked alongside Amara, assisting in household chores and helping younger children understand the importance of integrity. Her initial fear transformed into cautious respect, and over time, genuine remorse reshaped her character. She learned that the judgment of the spirits was not a punishment to fear alone but a lesson to guide the heart. The villagers noticed her change and began to trust her again, though always with the story of the nails as a reminder that malice must be tempered with care and reflection. As seasons shifted, Whispering Winds adapted the tale into rituals and small festivals. Children would reenact the events, carefully arranging sticks or small nails to represent the miraculous upright nails, while elders told the story with dramatic pauses and flourishes. These acts were not mere games, they were exercises in memory, moral reasoning, and communal cohesion. Through repetition, the story became embedded in the village's cultural fabric, a constant reminder that virtue required vigilance and that goodness, when practiced sincerely, attracted protection. Carvers and scribes began to document the tale in more permanent forms. Scrolls illustrated with simple figures and accompanying text were kept in the central meeting house, so that even future generations, unfamiliar with the original participants, could learn the lesson. The story of Amara and the upright nails became a guidepost, a moral compass for the young and old alike. Even the natural world seemed to honor the event. The reeds swayed with gentle reverence whenever someone approached the yard, and the soil where the nails had stood remained firmer and more fertile than surrounding areas. Villagers believed this was a blessing, a sign that the spirit's favor had extended not just to the righteous girl but to the land itself. Farmers noted that crops planted near the site grew healthier, stronger, and more resilient against drought or pests. By the time the next harvest came, Whispering Winds had fully integrated the story into their collective consciousness. Songs were sung and short plays performed, recounting the night of Leora's envy, Amara's innocence, and the miraculous upright nails. Villagers spoke openly about the importance of nurturing virtue, the dangers of envy, and the unseen guardians that watched over their lives. The tale served both as inspiration and warning, ensuring that the lessons endured far beyond the events themselves. Amara, standing in the yard one evening as the sun dipped low, observed the children reenacting the story. Their laughter and careful movements filled her heart with warmth. She realized that the true power of the morning lay not only in the spirit's intervention but in how the lesson had been carried forward, shaping a community that now understood the delicate balance between human action and moral consequence. The upright nails were more than objects. They were symbols etched into memory, wood and stone, eternal reminders that the invisible world responded to the visible deeds of the heart. As the seasons cycled through Whispering Winds, Amara's presence became woven into the very fabric of the village's life. She was no longer just the gentle girl who endured envy and malice. She had become a living symbol of virtue, courage, and the watchful protection of the spirits. Her quiet deeds, once overlooked by some, were now celebrated openly. Villagers sought her guidance, honored her insight, and recognized her as a figure whose wisdom and integrity could shape the community for generations to come. Every morning she walked through the village, her steps measured and calm, yet each movement carried an aura of quiet authority. Children trailed behind her, eager to learn, their eyes bright with curiosity and reverence. Women paused in the marketplace to offer smiles and nods of respect. Even the elders, who had once doubted the miraculous, approached her with renewed admiration, acknowledging not only her virtue but the tangible evidence of the spirit's favor. Leora, transformed by her earlier humiliation and the supernatural revelation, worked alongside Amara. She helped teach children the lessons of kindness, patience, and honesty, her previous envy replaced with humility. Though her path to redemption was ongoing, she became an active participant in preserving the moral fabric of the village. The upright nails remained in the yard as a permanent testament, maintained carefully by the villagers and serving as both lesson and shrine. Amara's role expanded beyond daily chores and guidance. The village entrusted her with responsibilities that required wisdom and discernment. She mediated disputes, oversaw communal projects, and led ceremonies that honored the unseen spirits. Each act reinforced the lesson that courage, patience, and integrity were far more powerful than malice or envy. Villagers came to understand that protection and respect were not given lightly, but earned through consistent virtue and in alignment with the moral order that the spirits upheld. During the yearly festivals, the story of the upright nails was retold with dramatizations and songs. Children played the roles of Amara and Leora, reenacting the miraculous events of that fateful morning. The adults narrated, emphasizing the consequences of envy and the rewards of patience, virtue, and moral courage. Each festival became a celebration not only of the past but of ongoing commitment to the principles the village now held sacred. One evening, as twilight draped the village in soft lavender hues, Amara stood in the yard, watching as children carefully lit small torches from the flames of a communal fire. The light flickered in their eyes, mirroring the brilliance of hope and courage in their hearts. One by one they approached the upright nails, holding their torches high, drawing inspiration from the symbols of truth, justice, and spiritual vigilance. Amara lifted her hands toward the sky, and from the warmth in her palms, faint flickers of flame danced without burning her skin. The village watched in awe, recognizing that her connection to the forces that had intervened that morning was enduring. She had become a bridge between the visible and invisible, a protector whose virtue manifested in tangible ways, guiding and safeguarding whispering winds. The elders smiled knowingly. The lessons of the past, envy, malice, virtue, and divine intervention, had been absorbed, internalized, and transformed into living tradition. The village, once simple and wary, had grown into a community mindful of the unseen, attuned to the moral order, and united by the shared experience of witnessing the extraordinary. Amara's legacy was no longer a single miraculous event but an ongoing presence in the daily life of Whispering Winds. Children learned not only to fear cruelty but to embrace courage and kindness, and adults recognized the subtle ways the spirits guided human hearts. Leora, now a willing student of humility, helped amplify this legacy, ensuring that the lessons endured beyond individual lifetimes. As night fell and the village settled, the upright nails glowed faintly in the torchlight, casting long, protective shadows. The story of Amara, her virtue, and the miraculous upright nails became eternal, etched into the memory of the village, into wooden tablets, into songs, and into the hearts of every child who would grow up understanding the value of courage, patience, and righteousness. The final image lingered in every mind, Amara standing tall, gentle fire flickering in her palms, children lighting their torches from her eternal flame, and the upright nails standing as silent sentinels. Whispering Winds had transformed forever, its people bound by the lessons of virtue, protection, and the enduring power of truth. In the balance between malice and goodness, between human action and spiritual justice, Amara had become the eternal fire-bearer of the village, a guardian whose presence would inspire generations to come.